What's shaking, cats and kittens? I'm Rob Lee from Getting to the Truth in This Art. And this podcast is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Bazaar. Bazaar is a gift shop for those seeking the strange and unusual. Got morbid curiosity? Got an interest in natural history? Bazaar's got you covered. Bazaar specializes in antique medical equipment, jewelry, prints, funerary antiques, and many other morbid gifts. The inventory is ever-changing. I'm wearing a great death's head moth pin, and I'm enjoying this hand-poured candle called Overgrown Cemetery. It's great. It has the studio smelling awesome. Head on over to 3534 Chestnut Avenue in Baltimore, it's in that Hamden neighborhood, and see what they got to offer at Bazaar. Tell them Rob Lee sent you. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is an award-winning 2D character animator with passions in directing, screenwriting, and arts organization, Christina Fidler. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rob.
So this is great. We talked a little bit beforehand. So, definitely it's like verbal alcohol. You kind of make everyone like really cool and relaxed. I still have my rock glass from earlier in front of me. So
you've socially lubricated me.
Yes. So thank you for being on this podcast. This is a treat, and it's always good to talk to somebody who has a good sense of humor. And based on a conversation we were having earlier, you got to go. And so this is going to be fun. So I gave that really high level, the official IMDb-ish level review of your background. But please, for those who are uninitiated, give us that background of your work and what you're all about.
Yeah. So I'm Christina Fidler. I'm a 2D character animator, director, and screenwriter. I've done work for Comedy Central and XPA Media with you, Roses for Baltimore, Mind in Motion, and various other people and projects. So I've done a lot of freelance work. And also community arts organization. When I was in school, I just graduated last year from the Maryland Institute of College of Art. MICA. I was the president of the only student chapter of Women in Animation in Maryland. So I was running festivals and like workshops for like students, like professional development type things where people could kind of like hone their craft and talk to people that like do these things for a living and see that there are other people like them out in the world. But yeah, generally I'm a very, very nervous person. So a lot of what I do in my own personal work is really just like pointing a finger at like my insecurities and the things I like really hate about myself and like just like laughing at it. I really lean into this like raunchy, cynical, and like high energy anxiety that I'm always kind of just like humming with all the time. And so like what I do is adult based for sure, like sexual anxiety, challenges navigating interpersonal relationships, crude humor, relentless introspection, kind of like wrapped up into this twitchy fever dream of like bug-eyed dogs and people with really lanky limbs and messed up perspective. I love like wonky angles and shit, like shapes that feel really offbeat and strange. And that's kind of like the pitch for me.
You were just describing my body type with like lanky limbs and I don't have bug eyes because they're back to normal. I had to see an eye doctor today because I'm getting new glasses. And
congratulations!
I was like, oh snap, my eyes are open, and this Blasian aesthetic is going away. So I read that your work, and you touched on it a second ago, kind of the tensions between comedy and anxiety. So is there like humor within a situation that wouldn't be funny at the time that comes to mind, but in hindsight, it's like, okay, that was hilarious?
Yeah, so it can be that way. A lot of the time when I'm making work, I'm kind of like, what if we take a moment that feels like so horrifying and embarrassing and weird and like push it as far as it can go? Like, how can I torture this character with a flaw I've ripped from something I see in myself and like find humor in it? So it's like, it's cathartic, really. My whole process feels, it's very cathartic. It's always about me in some way, shape, or form. but it makes me feel like the things I freak out about internally or worry about on a daily basis, like aren't as scary as I make them out to be, like all the time in my head. So, because I do that a lot, Rob. So like I catastrophize and I obsess and all that. So it's like, what happens when you push a scenario to the most outrageous or bizarre degree? Like a lot of the time when you're living in something, like, you know, it feels worse than it actually is to anyone on the outside. And the same with like, oh, you look back on that thing and it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Or like, oh, like I was, you know, I had my undies in a bunch or whatever. I was all toasted up because like, you know, someone didn't wave to me when I saw them crossing the street and it turns out they just didn't see me or whatever. But I guess it's like the whole process is just kind of like of making that kind of work is for me to try and keep my brain in check, like trying to tell it to like, shut the fuck up and let me have fun and not be afraid to like live life. And I want other people to kind of like, because I know it's a very human experience. I feel like these things come from very common experiences that we just share as social creatures. And it's like, I want people to be like, oh my God, yeah, no, that happens to me too. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Like I get nervous shits or like, yep, I am constantly like, you know, like what the, you know what I mean? Like basically I'm trying to take those very human experiences and see how far I can warp them while still being relatable and fun and quirky, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. At one point where I feel like I was at one of my very creative periods where I feel like I was living like an artist's lifestyle, and I was podcasting. I was barely making any money because I was a freelancer at a college, and I was always around people creating. And me and one of my peers, we had this regular meeting. It was lunch, but it was a regular meeting where we would write down ideas and try to like turn it on its side. So at the time, he was like older than me, so he was living vicariously through some of the people I was dating at the time. I was like, oh, let's hear about these relationships. So I would describe them in ridiculous detail because once I have someone that's interested in what I'm saying, I was like, all right, let's make this into a bit. And it was this one thing I remember talking about, like literally the idea of like the date from hell. And I was like, oh no, this is literally what's happened. I was like, everyone is just seeing a normal date.
Yeah.
Like for coffee or something. I'm sitting across from a demon and it's just fire everywhere. And I just want to look at it from the audience's perspective. When I was writing this thing down, we used to do treatments, the whole gamut. And we just couldn't take it to whatever that next level was to bring it to fruition. But, yeah, so now that's an element in how I tell stories that are usually wild. Like I will tell you this one off mic because I cannot put it in front of polite company. All right, but it's don't let me forget it because
I'll remind you, Rob. I'll remind the hell out of you. Don't worry.
It involved collard greens and raisins.
Oh God. Okay.
So,
all right.
That's a sazon, if you will, a little bit of a taste. It's a precursor.
The adobo.
Well, so you mentioned part of that creativeness, and you kind of, I think, touched on like how you found it. Like, was there any like aha moment of, all right, let me use this as an outlet? Because I remember you mentioned catastrophizing. That's one of those therapy words that I've heard before. And I used to use the Japanese idea of let's just act like you're a samurai and imagine how you're going to die. And that's how you limit catastrophizing.
Yeah.
This is what my mindful therapist told me at one point. But in finding that creative niche, like how did you like, what was that conversation like maybe internally? Yeah,
no, honestly, it probably... So like, you know, you go to school and you start school and they're like, oh, welcome to school. You're going to like learn how to become an artist and blah, 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 art school. You know, I spent like a lot of time, like my first few years, just kind of like, you know, I like drawing these things and I like doing those things and like, oh, that looks cool. Why does it look cool? And kind of learning why I liked the things that I liked and learning why, I don't know, something worked like visually, right? And I have a mentor and he was one of my professors my junior year, my senior year of college. And, we have to do a thesis our senior year, which was, the film that, the award-winning director, Christina Fidler, that was my film, Condolences from the Vulgar Tongue, or Boner. So I spent like 10 months on that project. And I think that was the kind of point that like, I really, like everything that I had internalized and learned over the years kind of came together into this very like cohesive package of a 5.5-minute film, right? So I guess where my mentor comes in is I would come in every day and I'd be like, Isma, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I don't know, like I want to tell a story that means something to me, which I hope in turn will mean something to other people. And like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. What if I can't figure it out? And he used to tell me all the time, it's already there. The story's already there. It's in you. And learning to kind of trust that everything I wanted to say and everything that I felt would come out in some way, shape, or form if I like put a pen to paper and I started drawing a picture, or, like I wrote a scene or something. And so I think it was my thesis film, and hearing him tell me that every day when I came in and was like, oh my God, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like the process, it's already there. And so I guess I kind of leaned into that and was like, okay, I was just making and trying not to think too hard about it. And then I'd sit down and look at everything that kind of came out, like all the shots that I was working on and like how they would flow together, like just in a timeline. And I was like, oh, wow, the things I really like are kind of like coming out on screen. And this time I made them. It wasn't someone else. And I was like, oh my God, like I can do that. And I did it. And I guess that really helped me shape like what it is I find interesting about life and about myself and other human beings. And I was like, okay, why does animation, like, why is it different than say a live action film and picking up a camera and like filming a story, like with real people that, and like the laws of gravity and like, the limitations of where you can put a camera and things like that. And I was like, a story told in the form of like animation, like you can really push things and you can really kind of get across things that like, whether they're subtle or like in your face, like you can really kind of mess with the degree to which you want to like hammer in a point or like, create a feeling. And like, again, you can do those things with any medium. It's just, for me, animation is the thing that like makes the most sense. Yeah, I guess I was just also really super lucky to have friends that also are artists, and they're still my friends. I was like, I had friends.
I erased them.
Yeah, just like,
get out of here.
Like I have friends that are also artists, and they're different art. Like they're not just animators; they're illustrators and graphic designers and filmmakers and photographers, and they see the world a little bit differently. But it's really amazing how like those like our techniques and even just like some of the ways that we notice stuff and some of the ways we want to communicate things kind of mesh. So a lot of it is just kind of, a lot of it was just discovery. My film was the thing that was like, oh, I can do that. And now I'm just kind of like, all right, Christina, just trust that everything you want to say is in you all the time. And me talking to you is like the same, like the way I'm talking is the way I kind of just make the art. I'm like, if I'm like this is the energy I give you. This is kind of what I'm trying to capture in an image, if that makes any sense.
That's the thing that I used to not struggle with, but I used to like juggle when, like I said, I've been doing this pod, and I'm 1,000, but I've been doing this pod for, quite some time. And I would have people who would listen to it. It's like, so how close is Rob on Robcast or Getting to the Truth in This Art or any of the other podcasts that I've done to the real Rob? And I was like, well, look at it like a wrestler. Look at it like that kind of promos. Like it has to be some of that there, but it's amplified because it is presenting something. You're using whatever your skill set is to get that out there. So I am maybe more provocative in some respects, or just like, you know what, this could be an interesting conversation, or just being ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to touch on, this is going to date me because this came out the year I was born. There's a song by Aha called Take On Me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think it's okay. That one's a meme. Everyone knows that one. You're good. You're not dating yourself.
So there's a movie that came out not too long ago, maybe 6 years ago, called Zoom, I think. And they take the same idea and just turn it into a full film. It's like, it's a woman in the movie. I forget who the character is. I feel like it's like maybe Zooey Deschanel. I don't remember. Anyway, she has a thing for some dude that's in a comic, and she like manifests him to real life. So he's like animated, and they're dating, and it's fucking weird and strange and is interesting. But when you're able to, it's more so going back to that point you were getting at about how like animation, you have a little bit more flexibility and kind of less like perimeters, because I think live action knows it, that they have those parameters. That's why they try to inject animation in it sometimes, like especially with like superhero movies sometimes. It's like, oh, you drew that. It's well shaded and it looks real.
Yeah.
But you drew that because nobody can move like Spider-Man or what have you. So yeah, I definitely understand that. So what was the response to Boner? What was the response to condolences from a vulgar tongue?
Yeah. So honestly, I didn't really expect it to be, I really didn't expect the reception that I've received. I'm really grateful and really lucky. Like so I finished it during COVID. So like it was kind of like in March. I can't believe it's been oh God. I was working on that when everything shut down. And so it just became me in my room, just working all the time on this thing, like staring at a screen for hours and hours and hours and hours a day. And my roommate had a computer that could like handle rendering, because mine was like, please don't. So I would go down there to their room and I would just sit there from like 8 a.m. to like 10 p.m. trying to like composite and render and do all this shit. And the whole time when you stare at something for so long, you're like, oh my God, I'm tired of this. I don't think anyone's going to care. It's just like, like, how do I know this is even anything? And, my mentor was like, just submit it to things. Just do it, And like my friends were like, who gives a shit? You miss 100% of the shots you never take. Nah.
It's a drill line, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, I submitted it to Sweaty Eyeballs, Animation Block Party, which is like one of the largest like East Coast like celebrations of animation. And I got into Couch Film Festival, which it's a Canadian festival. So I could say I'm an international, I'm going around the world, but what sucks is that like with COVID, you can't really have the experience of being at a festival and like talking to all these people and like watching things with a bunch of strangers in a giant dark room and like clapping at the same time and like reacting. So I really wish that I had the experience of like being able to see, like gauge an audience in real time. That's something that I wish that I had the opportunity to like experience. But also with online festivals, it's made things so much more accessible. So people can watch from the comfort of their homes, their phones, their laptops. And I've gotten like messages from people that are like, oh my God, I saw your film. And like, it was so good. And like, wow. And I'm like, really? And I've had people, it's really interesting to see what people take from that project. I've had people tell me like, like I lost my mom last year, they would say. And like, I really felt the kind of like burden of responsibility, like, and watching that film really took me back to that time. And it's really relatable in that regard. Or someone else said to me like, yeah, Huxley, the main character, Huxley really like goes on this entrepreneurial journey. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like to me, a lot of it is just like a commentary on like a critique on capitalism. But they were like, yeah, he really just became like the ultimate salesman. And I'm like, it's just really interesting to see how like something that I thought, or, you know, like when you make something, you have certain intentions for it, seeing how it like takes on a life of its own, and then seeing how like other people kind of just take that, internalize bits of it, and then kind of share with you things about their own experience or their own life. And it's really cool. And I think it's something, it's like really an honor and a privilege as an artist to be able to like open that up for people, you know, like have someone be like, this reminded me of this very personal thing. And like, I'm glad that you told this story because I liked that part. Or, oh my God, when all the dogs were licking the bones, oh my goodness, I was horrified. And I was like, good, that's exactly what I wanted. And it worked.
That's what worked for you.
Yeah. And it's like, got it. And so it's been really great having that out there, and just kind of I've met a lot of really talented people because, you know, other people in festivals and other people seeing things, and then like seeing my film, and then me going, oh, who are these people seeing my film? And then me seeing all their work. And it's like, it's just so cool. And I'm really glad that like, this is what I do. And I'm really like in love with the people that like I get to make things with, you know, and it's been it's opened a lot of doors for me. So thanks, Boner.
It's good to end it with that. I like that. So let's see. I got a Brooklyn question in here because we'll talk about that. So what is your take on gender inclusion and cultural diversity within animation?
That is a big question that I won't even be able to scratch the surface of, but like we're gonna try. Yeah. So a lot of like animation, like the history of animation is very dark. You know, racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, those things were rampant in an industry that was like very clearly dominated by white men in the early 1900s. Yeah. And both in the cartoons that they were making and in real life. And this industry is still dominated by white men, some of whom have like weaponized their power and influence to keep others down and like shame people who are different than them. Sorry, there's a car coming by. I hope that wasn't too loud. Like shame people who like were different than them and like would just do really horrible things. It's really unfortunate that like names are still coming out in like Hollywood and in like the industry where you're like, oh yeah, like John Lasseter, you're like, wow, someone like that who like made all the films that like we all know was like sexually harassing women, you know, like throughout his time in this industry, and he still gets a pass because he's still making things, and you're like, wow. So, you know, for the longest time, like this industry has felt very gatekeepy and almost like incestuous in the kind of like we hire only the people we know, and like, you know, all of my little, like the boys club or whatever. And times are changing. It's a very slow change. But like still like the numbers in like 2019 were like in film alone, like only 3% of directors are women. And like 1% of those directors were women of color. And you know, granted that was 2019 and now we're in 2021, but like still that's kind of like, I'm weary about the checkmark diversity effect where like companies will hire one Black person or one queer person or one woman to like hit a mark and flash it like a trophy, you know, and then like they'll hire those people with like the expectation that they will be useful for like curing other people's ignorance, or like that their insight is only useful when it needs to be injected into like a part of a story. Versus like viewing those people as creatives with artistic visions and sensibilities that like deserve their own platforms, you know, and we should be finding ways to kind of boost those voices so that like their projects can be on the big screen, you know, and like whether it's on like whether it's on a big screen or it's like the television or the internet, like to have young kids and people who were deprived of those experiences growing up, like giving them the opportunity to be like, oh my God, that's me on the screen. You know, or like, that's me, I feel seen. Like, that is what I am grateful that we're starting to see in recent years. But like, you know, you have to keep an eye out for genuinity and celebrating successes and knowing that like you can be critical of something even as you consume and enjoy it, you know, like it's okay for dualities to exist. And I think
it could be both at the same time.
Yeah. Like, a lot of people, with, I'll use Soul as an example, right? Like people were really excited that like, we're like, this is like, I guess the first one of the most recent and very successful like Black led films, like look at all these characters, like this is awesome. But then it's like, oh, Disney did the thing again where they take a character of color and then turn them into, they anthropomorphize them for a good chunk of the movie. Yeah. Or like, they're an animal or they're an object. And it's like,
it turns into almost that. I remember it was a clip from, I think it was a Roxanne Gay interview, and she was just talking about how people were complaining about Wonder Woman. It's like, I just don't want to win. I just don't want to win in any way. And going back to that one thing, and I didn't want to cut you off. It's funny. It's an assessment that I usually make where I won't take it from my buddy because he always says woke dollars. That's what he describes. Woke dollars. Yeah, but he's like, he's like your activism, all of these different things. Yeah. He's like, it's something that has a dollar amount attached to it, and the thing that always catches me is like, what queer woman of color, because it has to be multiple tiers at one time because it's being used in a fetishy sort of, to your point, let's check this box. And now we can move back on to this white dude is saving the universe.
Yeah, a CG bro or a film bro. Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, in terms of someone feeling seen, it's very kind of interesting as to what's acceptable in being seen and what's kind of not, it is not in a conversation of being shamed or being excluded. So like if we have, let's put it this way. If we have an obesity problem here, right? Where's your fat superhero? Where's your fat leading man or woman? Where's your chunky representation? And that's the thing that's kind of weird to me. It's like there's no dollars in that.
Yeah.
That, at least that's my standpoint. Maybe I'm wrong in it, but it's just interesting on what gets the rock.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. And it's interesting because it's like the people that determine like what's going to go on screen. What's going to go on screen or what's palatable for audiences a lot of the time is just, the white man executive going, like this can be the thing. Okay, Black person or queer person or woman person, like you can put this here, like this will work. But anything else might be too uncomfortable for people. And it's like, it's really frustrating that like those are the kinds of hurdles that we still have to navigate in the year 2021, and that's why like talking about like mentioning earlier when I was working with WIA and Women in Animation and like building workshops and film festivals and portfolio reviews, this was all like in an effort to facilitate a space where developing artists could be themselves, meet each other and like learn that they deserve a lot more than they think. And like, that like we shouldn't have to, and I say we because I'm also like, I'm a part of this, you're a part of this, even if it's not animation, it's still this kind of a this creative world, this creative bubble that we live in, like we shouldn't have to settle for mistreatment or poor representation or exploitation of our services and our creative minds, entering an industry that will be changed and shaped for the better by these like new generations of artists. And and like we're going to change it, and that's something that like I want young people like to have faith in. And it's like I also want people to know that like none of us really like it's okay to not really know what you're doing or how you're going to get there, but like we're all going to figure it out together because we all want the same thing, and I wrote down just a couple of like, just if people are interested, like there's some really great platforms out there helping to diversify like the animation industry specifically and like celebrate the whole new age of creators in animation. And like Rise Up Animation is a really great org, Black and Animated, and it's like the N, not and. The Culture Podcast, Women in Animation, WIA, and Straight Ahead is a new podcast about independent animators. Those are just like a few of like a really great list of like orgs and podcasts and like Instagram pages that are like interviewing all different kinds of animators and artists, and it's really awesome and people should check them out.
I think it's going to be a lot of really cool and interesting things that come out of across mediums, but especially like in animations, what you were describing and working on Boner, like just those long hours. And I think part of it maybe was aided by we're in the middle of a pandemic, so people are inside, so maybe a lot of good things coming out of that. And the thing that I'm always looking at, when there is someone that finally gets that opportunity that they're put in front of the white man is like, all right, here you go. Here's an opportunity for you. It's like, what are you going to do with it? And because my thing is, I'm critical of everyone in the same way.
Yeah.
And when I was like, oh, so that's what you chose, that bullshit. And I'll just call it what it is. And then other times it's like, all right, I'm going to eat my words. And I look for it because, especially when it comes to, because since my experience is a delicious black man, so I have to look for
so delicioso.
What's the black thing, right? And I'm always craving for like, when are we gonna get some Walter Mosley stuff? When are we gonna get these types of stories? We don't have any of that stuff. No one wants to do that. No one wants to take that rock. And I always look for that. And I'm not talking about it having to be live action. It's like, why can't this be a well done animated piece? Why can't we get something that's dope, or something like Black Dynamite, which is fucking phenomenal? It's like, oh, so we just get 2 seasons of that and that's donezo.
And
got it.
Those things, like those people with those ideas are out there, like existing, but it's just really hard to kind of climb through all of those like hurdles and like freaking brick walls that stop them from being able to kind of make the best things that they want to make. And it's just really interesting to see like how certain ideas that people have can kind of get watered down and co-opted by like major corporations and turned into ideas that people think are like unique and fresh and like woke, when it's like, those weren't the original minds behind those things. And I think that's something that's like worth talking about, Yes.
When you look at like stuff from, I'll every now and again I'll do a deep dive into like the 50s and 60s and look at stuff then like old Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Star Trek,
my dad
things like
loved
that, right?
Outer Limits.
And I listen and I read like Philip K. Dick books and and things in that kind of vein, because I feel like that was a weird period where it was a shift that people are just now starting to talk about with, oh, we know the aliens are real. It's like, we knew then. Or some of the roots of some of the sci-fi stuff that we see now comes from stuff then. And I was especially look at Gene Roddenberry and who's the dude from Twilight Zone or what have you? I'm blanking because I smoke too much weed. But in it, I'm just like, concessions were made to, it's like these characters in this, Rod Serling, these characters in this episode, they are black, but we're going to make them aliens because that's more appropriate. It's like they're the vehicle. This is a sci-fi show. You can't talk about social justice in the 50s or whatever the thing was in the 50s or what have you. You can't talk about equality in the 50s. Those have to be aliens. Cool. They're going to be gay aliens. Sure. And I think that different versions of those same concessions are made. So, in those instances where, like, I remember people talking about, what is that? That Netflix movie about the black toy creator, what have you. Forrest Whitaker was in it. I think it was like Django or something. I don't know. It came out this past year anyway. Yeah. It was all black cast and all of that stuff. And people are doing cartwheels and moonwalking and all of that stuff about it. I'm like, that's cool. I was like, why is Ricky Martin's character like kind of like a little on the problematic side? Because he's like a Spanish marionette or something, and it has the cringy kind of. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like, if we're doing it, do all of it. Don't cherry pick. That's the thing that gets me. So I'll leave that. That's probably a conversation for a later time, because I can deep dive into that because I'm surly and old. Yeah, and like I said, it's like it's a really, really, like just scratching the surface, we're just taking a little, like, it's like a little lottery ticket, and we're taking a little quarter and we're just going, like, there's. I was going to go drugs. We're taking just enough to do one quick bump and then, just back to the rest of the day. So I got a few more questions before I give you back the rest of your afternoon.
Lay it on me.
So, what are, because we shitted on cartoons a little bit there, but what are some of your favorite cartoons?
Oh my God. See, that's like
I'll limit it to 3 cartoons. I'll simplify it.
Okay.
See? It's not a top 3. It's just 3 that come to mind.
Okay. Animaniacs, the original Animaniacs is the reason I started. It's the reason why I'm here talking to you right now. Like I was like, oh my God, this is why I want to be an animator.
It's top tier.
Yeah. Top, like that's God level. Okay. Like that's the, like, yeah. And I think anybody who knows me is going to be like, oh Jesus, like there she goes again, talking about fucking Animaniacs. Yeah. That's the reason. The reboot is really awesome. I love it. Certain things, you know, you love the original for what it is, and you love the new thing for what it is. So without a doubt, that was when I was a kid. I used to like, you could tell that episodes and even shots in an episode were, they looked different stylistically. And I like found all of the studios that had made like all of the different like shots that I was recognizing. So like I could tell like, oh, that one studio in Chicago did this shot, or like did the like Wacko's America, or like the intro was done by that one studio in Japan. And I was like, wow, you can really make cartoons, and like you can make this, and that's really fucking cool. And I want to do that, you know? And then I'm going to loop these together just because like just let me do it, Rob, please. BoJack Horseman and Tuca and Birdie, without a doubt, just because like, Raphael Bob Waxberg and Lisa Hannawalt kind of worked together on both of those things. And they'd been friends, I think, since like high school. My friend gave me the Art of BoJack Horseman book, and I had been reading it, and I was like, wow, like collaborators and cool things. And it's just really sick to see how like, I think those are shows to me that are kind of like, why can't like, you know, they're really good because they can't be told in any other medium. I really feel like those are stories that just can't exist with the same jokes and tones and like atmospheres that they have, you know, being animated shows. And just with BoJack, it's like, you know, the discussions on mental health and the kind of messy and like broken, like getting to see characters be messy and broken and see part of yourself in them, and like cherry pick the things that like you relate to. And the times I've fucking cried watching that show and just being like, wow, this is what I want to do. And these are the stories I want to tell. People are messed up and the world is sick. And like, how can we find ways to kind of, you know, enjoy what we have, or like laugh at the things that we can laugh at, you know, like there obviously, you know, there's degrees to which you can like punch up on things. You never want to punch down, but like, you know, and Tuca and Birdie is just a really awesome example of like a show that is about 2 like women characters that are like gross and obscene and fun. And it's like great that like you can have that on a, you know, like women are just as gross and obscene and fun as like anyone else. And it's like awesome in that way. And then the reason why I got to loop those together is because I really want to say that Victoria Vincent is one of my favorite animators. She's known as Vune on the internet. She made Cat City, Twins in Paradise, most recently Bobo the Monkey, which I think was also featured in one of the Adult Swim shorts. She is an incredible animator and one of my hugest like influences, like aesthetically and just tonally. Love her work. Those are the 3. Those are the 3. Oh, they're 4.
All right. So I was going to throw in, well, I will throw it in there. So we're going to have to be as quick as possible in these next ones.
Okay.
And this one is hard. So you're from Brooklyn originally.
Yep. Brooklyn, New York.
Boo. How does Brooklyn, in your opinion, measure up? Like, is it positively, or it's like, no place is Brooklyn? How does Baltimore measure up to Brooklyn? That's
really funny because I can answer that one so easily, because that's the one damn question everyone on Tinder will ask you all the fucking time. So it's like, oh, here. I love both places. They're different for sure. But like in Brooklyn, I lived like, you know, small, like South Brooklyn, it's very quiet there. It's near Coney Island, but I went to school on the Upper West Side, and like I went to school in Coney Island and all these places. Meh. But like, so there is like a hustle and bustle that like I've kind of internalized. It's with me always. I'm always walking faster than all my friends here in Baltimore. But what I really love about what Baltimore has to offer is like, you know, the communities. And I think people who live here really care about Baltimore and really care about like creatives. It's smaller than like New York. It feels to me, but it's more intimate, you know, like with New York, it's like everyone goes there. They all want to be something. It's like big leagues, or like they think it's big leagues, you know, they're like, oh, this is where it all is. So it's a lot of people who think they're hot shots when like really, you know, people are sleeping on places like Baltimore where like all of these people are making great things and they get to do it with their friends and their neighbors. And like, it's a little quieter than I'm used to because there are times when I'm like, oh my God, it's 1 a.m. and I really want to order something and everything closes at 9 and I'm going to fucking lose my mind.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Like I'm still not used to that after being here for, you know, I guess going on 5 years now, but you know, I love both places dearly. The other thing I miss is the transportation of New York. I don't know how to drive, and that it's a little hard. But I love walking around, and that's again another thing about Baltimore is the architecture is ridiculous here. It's so delicious.
That's their word again.
Yeah, and honestly, like, you know, there's a really interesting and long history of Baltimore, and you know, it's very dark and it's also very informative and important, and it really, I really like it here, and I really like Brooklyn too, and they hold different places in my heart. And yeah, I hope that was succinct enough.
That answers it. All right, so here's the ball buster question.
All right, bust my balls.
Are you a meat eater? Real quick.
Say that again.
Do you eat meat?
Oh, no, I don't. I thought you said mediator, and I was like, no, I don't. No meat.
All right, so I got to throw that one out.
Okay.
Seafood.
Once in a while.
All right. Beer.
Yeah, I like beer.
Okay. Because I was like, because I have to ask that because I've been running into a lot of people who have shellfish allergies. So it's like, okay, I can't ask you what crab cake you're eating. I can't ask you what's in your chicken box.
Yeah.
What is, when you think of like a Baltimore related food, what is that quintessential Baltimore food for you that you would eat?
I mean, like, honestly, I had never, like, I know this is going to be like a generic ass answer, but like, I had never deconstructed a crab in my life before I got here. And my friends were like, I have a few friends who like have lived here their whole lives. And they're like, are you shitting me? They were like, okay, we're going to go get like a bushel of crabs and we're going to like lay down some newspapers and we're going to sit your ass down and we're going to teach you how to do this. And
that's communal experience.
Yeah, no, I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, look at, I have one friend who was like, yeah, no, I love the eggs. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. She was like, yeah, they taste like mustard to me.
Trolling.
I was like, okay. And another friend of ours, who also like doesn't really eat meat, she'll eat like fish from time to time. I had to do all of her, like, I had to break open all of her crabs for her. So they were like, this is how you do it. Take this knowledge with you. So I'm trying to like pass on what I know.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, honestly, I had never done that and can't wait to do it again because it really is like a ceremony. It's an experience. You sit down, you lay everything down, you get dirty, you know?
Yeah.
You get dirty, you get down and dirty, you get messy and all.
When you're cracking claws, it's not meant for the faint of heart. You got to crack some shells sometimes.
Yeah, no. And it's, I kind of like, it's kind of fun. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that I enjoyed it. It felt a little brutal, but I was like, you know what? Like, sometimes you gotta do those things, you know?
Yeah. So in the last moment, I like to do that shameless plug and tell folks where can they find you, where your social media, your website, all that good stuff.
Oh, hell yeah. So you can find my work at ChristinaFidler.com, Fidler. I have an Instagram. It's SchwiftyBits, which is like SchwiftyBits. I had to like type it out as I was spelling it to make sure I was spelling it right.
I noticed that. I was like,
And actually, the work I did with Comedy Central just came out. They have a new digital shorts like YouTube. So I think it's called Comedy Central Animated. And the project I worked on was called Pitchin' Impossible. And it's just a bunch of comedians and like funny people who kind of jokingly pitch pilots for shows that would never make it on air. And that's coming out now. So I pitched for that. I animated for that. That was a great time. Grant, the guy who runs the entire thing, he has another show called Tales from the Trip, which people might know. He's a great guy. He's really funny. Oh, it's a great project. And that's kind of, that's, you can watch Condolences on my website too. And anyone can always just drop me a line and say hi. I like talking to people. So, yeah.
So there you have it. I want to again thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rob. This is really fucking awesome.
Cool. So for Christina Fidler, I am Rob Lee saying that there is art in and around Baltimore. Just gotta look for it.